Alright, so Ubisoft released the Year 6 Season 2.2 designer notes, so I wanted to just kind of go through them and give my opinions regarding the changes that Ubisoft is making, so let's get into it. So first we see the win delta charts that Ubisoft loves to show. I don't think they actually know what to do with these charts, but they love having them, so here we can see Zofia at around an 80% pick rate with a maybe negative 1% win delta, and then Sledge, Ace, Iana, Thatcher all around the 40 to 50%. Sledge is slightly negative, the other three slightly positive. To be expected. Weakest operator Glaz. No one's surprised by that. On defense, Jager is still around 70%. Valak is looking really strong at 50% and plus 2%. Mozzie, Thunderbird looking alright. And Clash, Castle, Tachanka being the worst operators in terms of win delta and presence. Ban rates, literally nothing have changed. Now to the first piece of operator balancing that I disagree with. We see Ubisoft adding the 2.0 to Alibi's ACS 12. This means she's losing the 1.5 on that shotgun, and she's getting a 1.5 on her SMG, the Storm. So they claim they want Alibi to be more viable in roaming scenarios and appeal to frag-focused players. Obviously, to balance this, they're removing Frost 1.5, so they're basically shifting over the 1.5 from Frost to Alibi, which I think is just weird, because I think Frost without a 1.5 isn't really a pick. The C1 is picked because it has a 1.5 and has low recoil and good headshot potential, not because Frost is some amazing frag operator. And yeah, she has a secondary shotgun, which is pretty powerful, but the way Frost is played, she's not played for her utility. If you want utility, you play Castle with the secondary shotgun, or Mira with the secondary shotgun, or Smoke or Mute with the shotgun. Even Ella shotgun over Frost shotgun if you want utility. This really is the first example where Ubisoft doesn't understand their own win delta charts. Frost has a high win delta. She has the highest win delta out of all the defenders, not because she inherently is an overpowered operator, but because you're bringing Frost when you're already trashing the enemy team and you want to just go spawn peek and get some free kills, and you're probably going to already win that round because you bring Frost when you're pretty sure you're going to win. In that way, these statistics are inherently flawed, and Ubisoft doesn't realize that, and they think that this change is going to necessarily affect that in a positive way. You're going to change the numbers. Yes, Frost's win delta is going to go down. Her pick rate's going to go down too, because they're solving an issue that doesn't exist, which is Frost being overpowered, instead just making her really, really bad, instead of just kind of bad but okay for fragging. I think Alibi's going to fall in the same boat and get that scope removed in a season or two, at most, if this change goes through. Next, moving on to Tachanka. He has a deployable shield now replacing his proximity alarm. He has 4 more rounds for his Shumiko launcher, so up to 14, and his DP27 has greater destruction. But regardless of this, I don't think Tachanka is going to see any use still. Too many other operators have shields that are just better, and his gadget just feels clunky. I feel like the gadget could be good, but it just doesn't bounce. It doesn't have range. It just drops off way too fast. So I don't think Tachanka's gadget is just viable when smoke is an option. Now moving on to the first incredibly bad change, we're seeing Zofia with a nerf to her M762's recoil. So they're going to be increasing vertical recoil, increasing horizontal spread, making it stronger to the left, and changing the long burst recoil, which effectively doesn't really matter too much in terms of controlling the gun's recoil, but it's listed on the patch notes, so I thought I'd include it. This is the most blatant piece of evidence showing that Ubisoft doesn't understand their balancing matrix, which is the win delta versus presence. Zofia has a negative win delta, and that's pretty common in operators that have a very high presence because people are inclined to bring her because she's in every game. So if there's not a Zofia, people will bring a Zofia even if they don't know how to use her effectively, thus maybe making the team lose a little bit more. So that's irrelevant. But let's look at the high presence itself. Zofia has a high presence not because she's a fragging operator, but because she has a lot of utility. She has 2 impacts, 2 concussions, and a claymore. That's crazy. That's very good for an operator. So if you want to nerf Zofia's presence, do what you do with Ashe. Sure, her recoil's a little bit worse, but you still have the G36. You could still play Ashe. But you took away one of her breaching rounds, which was huge. You know, knocking her down from 3 explosives to 2 made Iana one of the best fraggers in Pro League, just because Iana can take away 3, and Ashe can't anymore. But Zofia can still burn 2 ADSs, break 2 deployable shields, or some configuration of that, and that's crazy. If you want to nerf Zofia, it's not because her gun is good. Ubisoft needs to understand that nerfing her on guns is not effective, and it doesn't solve any issues. It just pushes that issue onto another operator, and then 2 seasons down the line, every operator sucks. So, with that being said, I think it's also important to look at this last paragraph here. So I'll just read it out in its entirety. Since this will require a greater degree of control over her shots to secure frags, we expect Zofia to be less of an all-around pick who has both a strong, easy-to-use primary weapon and useful gadget. Her gadget will continue to be a draw, but those looking for a more easy-to-use frag-focused attacker will find Ace, Sledge, and Diana more enticing options. Ace is a frag-focused attacker? Is Ubisoft playing their own game? Have they played their own game ever? It's really clear that whoever's writing these patch notes, whoever's making these changes, are just out of touch with the game's community and just the game as a whole. I don't know. And again, even if we ignore Ace being a frag-focused attacker, according to Ubisoft, you still have the issue of Ubisoft nerfing around the guns to fix problems that don't exist, rather than targeting the ones that do exist, which is the fact that there are no other operators that are as good as Zofia, or as necessary as Zofia in the current meta. If Zofia isn't played, people are going to learn to control the M762 or switch the LMGE, which is still a fantastic gun, because we need Zofia's utility, not her gun. Her gadget is just too good to not bring in the current meta, because without Zofia, the utility meta returns and it's kind of over for attackers. Moving on to the last operator change. So Nook's balancing rework is being put on hold, and Ubisoft claims that Nook is already a difficult operator to detect, which I believe to be false. But they think that giving her invulnerability to these proximity gadgets would require removing something from her kit, because she would then be reaching bomb site totally undetected. Nook sucks. Nook is a terrible operator. If you don't think Nook is a terrible operator in her current state, you're crazy and you don't play the game. Nook needs something drastic like this to be played, and it was out on the test server for, I'm pretty sure, no more than a month, and it was taken out. And I don't think I heard any bad things about Nook. They kind of just disabled this change before anybody had a chance to play the test server. I think it was only a couple weeks, not even a month at that. But regardless, I feel like this is a lazy change, and it should at least be tested a little bit more on the test server. They have no stats about her win rates or anything, and I haven't personally, I know this is anecdotal, so you can't go off of this 100%, but I haven't heard any frustration with the presence reduction being buffed like that. So Ubisoft is claiming that players liked having the noise reduction over the immunity to proximity detectors. I don't know anybody who plays Nook for the noise reduction. You play Nook to hide from cams, which is not much. I feel like I've always been able to hear a Nook walking around anyways. I think this is a lazy change. I thought the rework was actually innovative and would have made Nook actually an operator you can play, but who knows? Maybe something else will happen in the near future. And final notes, so the ACS-12 is getting a 10-point damage increase, and the TCSG-12 is getting a 6-point damage increase. So both slug shotguns, so 2 of the slug shotguns are getting slightly buffed. I don't think this will do too much overall. I mean, the TCSG is a decent gun, and this damage still isn't as high as it has been in the past, so this is an alright change. This is really irrelevant compared to the rest of the designer notes. But I will say 2 final thoughts. One, Ubisoft needs to stop balancing around guns. It's been proven that it doesn't work. It doesn't address problems that actually exist. It just shifts the problems onto different operators. And then it's just this constant rubber banding cycle of nerf, operator becomes good, nerf, operator becomes more present, nerf, operator becomes more present, nerf. It's just unsustainable, and we're going to end with every operator being trash if it continues like this. If Ubisoft wants to actually fix issues, like with Jager, take away an ADS. Don't take away his gun's firing power. That's not going to provide a valuable change. Jager is picked because he can clear so much utility, and he's so important for a defending team. Jager is still better than Womai even after these nerfs. just because Jaeger has an infinite number of projectiles he can catch, whereas Wamai can only catch a finite number over a set interval. Jaeger can catch infinite as long as the gadgets are allowed to reset. On top of this, Wamai still has that pitfall of something like a nade still exploding, and it can still break your defender's gadgets, so it's not as useful as Jaeger's ADS, which just removes that gadget altogether. And the second issue I have with these designers' notes is that Ubisoft has been really silent with how they're planning on addressing the cheater problem and how they're planning on addressing mouse and keyboard to console too. This feels like they're just trying to kind of sweep it under the rug and hope we don't care. But who knows? Hopefully we get some more transparency from Ubisoft. But until then, these patch notes I'm pretty unhappy with. Let me know how you guys feel in the comments. I'll be reading all of those just to kind of gauge your general opinions, and I'll see you in the next one.